Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Living Room Talks with Sarah Jane. I'm so excited about today's interview, as today I have one of my best friends, Chandelle, joining us today. Hey, Shans.
Hello.
And I'm so excited because today we're going to be talking about forgiveness. And so this is such a big topic. And I know it's quite a personal topic for so many people. And today I've asked Shans to come and join me in this interview because I really believe that, Shans, that you have a word for such a time as this. And I believe partly from your experience and partly from the work that God's been getting you to do over the last little while, that you have a lot of insight, specifically around the topic of forgiveness. And so our hope and prayer is that as you listen to this interview, that you'll just be reminded of God's love for you, and you'll be reminded that forgiveness doesn't have to be scary, and why forgiveness is important and God's heart behind forgiveness. And so before we dive into that topic, Shans, I'd love you to tell the audience a little bit about you, who you are, your family, what do you do, anything that you'd like to share.
So yes, I'm Chandelle. I am a school teacher for primary kids. I have been working as a teacher for probably 10 years on and off. Have had a child in between then, so I have a 7.5-year-old son.
Yeah.
He looks much older than he is. And yeah, I've been a full-time mum with him. And yeah, I live with my parents, and we love God, both of us, and we've done life with God pretty much since I was a little girl. And so, yeah, I have worked in churches as well, and yeah, I serve a lot at my church, and that's a lot to do with my heart, to work with churches as well as the outer community. But yeah, that's me for now.
And I know as we kind of dive into forgiveness, we'll probably learn a bit more about you as well, Shans. But so forgiveness. So it's a broad topic. It's a personal topic. And I know it can be quite a sensitive topic as well. But when we read the Bible, and specifically in Matthew 18, Peter, one of the apostles, asked Jesus, or disciples, asked Jesus, how many times should one person forgive? And then Jesus goes on to reply, and he says 70 times 7. And to me, that really establishes that forgiveness is not just a once-off thing. Forgiveness is something that we need to do on a regular basis. And so, Shans, if we think about the topic forgiveness, why is it such an important topic to you?
I think forgiveness is important because in relationships, and that is a huge part of living life as a human being, we have relationships all around us. And I think forgiveness plays an important role in allowing freedom around relationships and allowing growth in relationships. Personally, I have some really precious relationships in my world. I have my relationship with God. I have a relationship with my son. And then I think of my family and my friends. And if it was not for forgiveness, we wouldn't be together. We wouldn't have closeness or intimacy or any kind of even friendship, because I make mistakes. I'm so imperfect. And yeah, like I've hurt each person that I've listed there for you, and there's lots more, but definitely in poor choices, I've hurt people along the way. And I think, if I could, I would rewind it. I would go back in time and I would stop myself before making those choices. But unfortunately, I cannot do that. And I have regret sometimes. But what I found was that through my relationship with God, that yes, I can't go back and change time, but because of love, we
Mm.
can grow closer together. And because of that love, forgiveness helps us overcome those hurdles of hurt and mistakes and grief, um, and that can bring us back together. And it doesn't mean just putting them aside and forgetting about them. We actually work through them and process them, and then we can come back together stronger. So
Yeah.
it's like you're building a muscle almost. Yeah, you get stronger from that process.
Yeah. And so as I was thinking about our interview today, I was thinking about forgiveness as a whole, and I kind of felt like there was 3 types of forgiveness. So there was forgiveness from God, which is super important, forgiving one another, which you were just talking about, and forgiving ourselves. Which of the 3, Shans, would you say is the hardest out of all the forgiveness?
So this is funny because when I was looking at this, I thought, I think it really depends. And that's really what it comes down to. I think for myself, sometimes it can be really hard to forgive myself because I've made a mistake that's really hurt someone I love, or it's even devastated their calling or their passion or their heart cry. And it's like, that they might have a business concept or idea, and I've done something or said something that's really hurt them and put them off going down that path. And so for me, because I adore and love them so much, I find it really hard to forgive myself, and I have to come to terms with that. Or it could be because I've done something really bad, and I have to come to terms with going, okay, I'm not perfect, and forgiving myself. But then on the other hand, there are some things that I'm reminded of that God helps me forgive myself. Also, it can be really hard to forgive others. Situations that present themselves can be really, really tough. And, I am a single mum, so I was married and not married anymore. And I know what it's like to have been abused and broken. And also to be the person who's broken a heart as well. And so receiving and giving both ways, I know what it feels like to be hurt in that way. And the whole thing around that, like working through that forgiveness, was very tough. But I know that on the other side now, years later, and fully forgiven and restored, I know the benefits of forgiving the hurt that had been caused and how much that hurt me. And then also forgiving God can be really tough. And that sounds really almost blasphemous, but things that I look at in life, like losing a friend, who was young, and thinking why she could have lived. I don't understand. And not that that was God's fault, but for me to come to terms with, negative thoughts that I had about that situation, and thinking you could have done something more. Coming to terms with that and working through that. And that's not necessarily forgiving God, but actually recognizing, things that happen in life, do happen in life. And I have to be able to go, okay, God, I'm disappointed or hurt, but I choose to stay close to you and put those feelings aside. And that is another process of forgiveness. And so, I think it really depends on the circumstance or the relationship, how deep that relationship is.
Shans, you mentioned you were married before. I imagine that there could be some people watching this interview who have either just come out of a broken relationship, whether that's divorce or whatever, or maybe it's been some time since then. How do you navigate forgiveness when it comes to a broken down relationship?
Okay, so this is really it's an interesting pathway, but I think ultimately you have to make the choice in your mind first. So you have to actually have to go, okay, my heart feels this way. It is angry. It is viciously not happy. And it's really hard to even consider forgiving whoever did whatever. but in your mind. And so this is where I came to, it was like I was at my wit's end. I really struggled for me, I was struggling with a broken heart, and more so with depression, the depression side. I wasn't depressed, but I was very, very, very sad and on the point, on that brink. And so what I found was I had to make a choice. It was a choice to stay in this place of negativity and allow it to eat me up and kill me. Or I could step out of it and go, okay, that was really bad, and it was not in any way right. It should never have happened, but it did. And I had to make the choice to step out of it and go, okay, I'm going to move forward. And so when I made that choice in my mind made the choice, but my heart took time to catch on. And so that took time. I took every day. I was telling myself I choose to forgive. Every day a bad thought came into my mind, I was choosing to say no, stop that bad thought, put that aside. I will not, I'm chosen to move forward. I've chosen to forgive now. I cannot go back and live in that bad thought or that bad experience. I can't relive it over and over in my head. I will never escape it then. And so that was a daily process. And like, I kind of liken it to a marathon, like running a marathon. You can't, eat cake every day and then think you're going to run a marathon and not have weight on. You have to actually train and eat well and sleep well. There's so many aspects to running a marathon. And I liken that to forgiveness. You actually have to put healthy steps in process. So it's choosing right thoughts, choosing every time a bad thought comes in, stopping it and telling it to, no, I'm not going to believe that thought anymore. Or it did happen, but I'm choosing to let that go now. Forgive it, put it aside. I'm moving forward. I also had healthy people, so healthy support people around me who didn't irk me on to like, they weren't going, yeah, let's hate that person too. They weren't doing that, but they were actually saying, okay, that really sucks, and would cry with me. They would hug me. They would take me out places, get me yummy food. But they never once stayed there with me in that bad place. They would tell me, okay, that really sucks, Shans, but now it's time to step out of it. And we are going to pray over it, or let's go do something to like release that frustration in like a physical way or tangible way. But now you've said you're going to forgive, so now you forgive. And they would remind me of my choice. So they weren't like being a lecturer or like a dominative person in my world. They were reminding me of where I wanted to go. And that really helped me. And that came from non-Christian people too. So I have Christian and non-Christian support people who would remind me of how well I'm doing and how far I'm coming and how I need to keep releasing and not staying in that negative place. And in that space was a really healthy place to vent out the frustration. So it was okay to say, you know what, I don't like that person and I don't like what happened or whatever. And it was okay, because I knew that safe person or that support person would cry with me, would feel and empathize with me, but then would help me step out of it. So I just think like those were kind of the main things that helped me process my hurt and frustration and unforgiveness in this very hard situation. And I am simplifying it. Those are really the steps I took. I was constantly reminding myself of my choice, choosing to stop the negative thoughts. And I had my positive people around me, my positive support people who would help me vent, but step out of it.
That's really helpful, Shans. And I know that that'll be really helpful for people who perhaps they're just going through a relationship breakdown. I feel like when you step into marriage, you're not thinking this is not going to last. Like, you are thinking this is forever. And when it breaks down and doesn't work, there are so many emotions you would be feeling. And so, like you said, it takes time. And I think for everyone, that length of time is different. Would you say? Definitely.
I definitely think the time varies per person. I do know that it can happen sooner than you think. So you might think, oh, nah, this is an unforgivable sin or an unforgivable mistake they've made, and I will be angry at them for 10 years. Like, you put a time frame on it. But I honestly think that if you really do process it and face it, and it's hard, it is really hard to face it. But when you do that, and you do that constantly every day, like, again, going back to that marathon, it gets easier each day. You put your foot to this, put your foot to it, put your foot to the training and the disciplines around it. And it will quicken the way that you can release things quickly. And you might find yourself even laughing over things and over good memories. And I did forget one massive thing, which, again, going back to Christianity, was I prayed a lot. I was constantly on my face in front of God and praying and crying and worshiping. Like, I just put music on and just listen to people worshiping God. That was another aspect to releasing a lot of what was on my heart, just crying it out in front of God. I didn't have to say anything. Sometimes only the words that could come out was help me. I had nothing left. And God really met me in those times. And so, but definitely timing is really dependent on the person. But I do believe fully that it doesn't have to take as long as you might set a time frame for. It can happen quicker than you think.
Yeah. And so, Shans, you mentioned you experienced the death of a friend as well. And I know this person was very young, and you talked about forgiving God. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Like, what did that look like for you, that process? And I guess do you think that was a little bit differently to a marriage breaking down, going through the death of a friend?
Yeah. It was definitely very different. I think, so with my marriage breakdown, I could identify things that I was angry about, things that I was hurt about and frustrated about. With the death of my friend, I think for me, there was a few aspects, but I believe God is all powerful, all good. He's the healer. So I really believed he could heal my friend. And I just, still to this day, I still find myself thinking, why didn't you? Or why was her time then? And why isn't she here now? And so out of that thought process came hurt feelings. Like, a person who could help her did not help her. And so for me, that process of going into those feelings was not nice. Still now I am emotional. I'm trying to control my emotions talking to you about the loss of this friend. It's still, for me, and she's been gone for 2 years now. But I think the more that I spend time remembering her and remembering the good times I had with her and the blessing she was to my life, the more I go back to God about it, he reveals more of the hurt that I felt from losing her. And he reminds me of all the good stuff too, but he reminds me of the hurt. So, the good stuff is that she's free from her suffering. She is fully free and in whole form. She no longer has cancer. She no longer has pain in her body. They're no longer operating on parts of her body. And she can talk freely. She's free, free of suffering. But here on earth, she would have been suffering if she was still alive, if she wasn't healed, if she was still with cancer. And I think, I don't have an answer around why she had to go or anything like that, but I do know that God understands beyond my understanding and knew that her time here on earth, though it was short and beautiful, it was impactful. She has left a legacy, and amazingly enough, she's impacted my heart so much. Like, I will never forget this beautiful woman in my world. And so I know that she's impacted many, but the process of forgiving in all of that was God actually highlighting to me the hurt that I had. And that was the unforgiveness I had towards God. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't really come to terms with it. I kind of just went, well, that's that, and would grieve her every time I thought about her. But God highlighted those thoughts to me. And then out of that, I realized, like, I don't have understanding. I'm a human being who can only understand so far. God has a bigger, broader concept of life and time and world and space and all of that. And so all I can do is trust that God knows what he's doing. And I do. I know he's good. I know he knows what he's doing. And I just had to come to terms with my feelings around that, and it was her time. And I had to release her back to God. She's in a better place. And yes, my emotions are hurt. It's very selfish. I want her back. I want to be able to spend time with her. But that's not for me to decide. And so when God highlighted it to me, I was able to process that and then in time forgive. Yeah.